All right, it's go time again, the town meeting program. We welcome you. It's April the 30th, a Thursday, and we close out a very interesting month in the history of the world. Town meeting brought to you as always by Cordova Wireless Communications, your local wireless service provider, which provides your local talk show, keeps those very important in pandemic times dollars circulating in our community. They're very proud of that, and we are very thankful that they sponsor our talk show. This is an on-demand show, by the way. It continues to be something we do as needed, and we always welcome your ideas for topics and your input if you want to suggest or write a letter that you'd like to have read, or you can even make little audio files on your phone if you wanted to have us play one of those. We're open to interactivity. So on the agenda today, we kind of review some of what went down at yesterday's council meeting, at least so far as I interpreted it. And obviously, if you really want to know what went down at yesterday's council meeting, listening to the original content is the best way to do that. But I'll try to summarize some things that I thought that I heard, at any rate. Then we also have a lot of information to share from the incident management team on progress in a variety of areas. If we have time after that, there's some reminders from the city regarding a few COVID-related topics. And the finale today, again, if there's time, the status of ferry service, or startling lack thereof. So, yesterday's council meeting, which, by the way, you can listen to in its entirety to develop your own interpretations of things by going to the city's YouTube channel or ours. We archive these special meetings at youtube.com/CordovaTV. And a topic that really dominated a lot of the conversation focused on, can our non-essential, what are called the non-essential businesses or services, things like general retail, restaurants, hair salons, these things that were covered in the most recent state mandate, can they start to open in Cordova? Because Cordova kept in place restrictions on having those types of businesses open because of concern about the coming influx of people to work for the fishing season. And the sense that I get is the council has felt it's important to not open non-essential businesses and have all these people come in at the same time in order to be able to track if an outbreak should happen. I get the sense that they feel that it would be easier to contact trace, as it's called, figure out what the source of a potential outbreak would be if, for example, you just have the processors functioning and not the non-essential businesses. And then if that seems to be going okay, once fishing is up and running and we don't seem to have any major incidents, then at that point begin to open these businesses that are not the grocery stores or the hardware stores, the ones that are called essential, quote unquote. There was some pushback against that, saying that, why does having a hair salon that is only serving one person at a time, for example, why does that create an appreciable increase in risk to the public, given that larger businesses are already open, processors, grocery stores, hardware stores? There's a lot of traffic through the essential businesses, so how much risk is really being mitigated by keeping these other types of business closed? So they went back and forth on that. And it was a fairly split decision to maintain tighter restrictions than the rest of the state for the time being. There were 2 different votes, and they were both 4-3. 4 in favor of maintaining the restrictions, and 3 not in favor of that. 3 of them wanted to see the smaller businesses able to start opening. And the result was, the reason that the 4 people who want to maintain the extra restrictions for now, the reason that they all gave, as I understand and interpret it, is they wanted to have Cordova's local incident management team and especially the local doctors weigh in on whether it's time to open up some of the other businesses yet. And they said several times, let's give it another 7 days so there's time for us to hear from our local experts and then readdress it next Wednesday. Now, it was interesting because that seemed to kind of go back and forth. On the one hand, it was like, yes, we can address it in 7 days, and then there was sort of a sense of, no, we can't. We can revisit it in 7 days, and then it might take another 7 to 14 days to actually implement something. And it got tough to follow for a while, but I think that eventually they brought it back to the point that the council's intent is to revisit the issue next week, which would be at a special meeting Wednesday night at 6 p.m., not one of the noon meetings, but they'd have a special meeting at 6 p.m. Wednesday before the regular meeting at 7. And at that point would take another look with IMT input and doctor input, local doctor input, to decide whether it's time to start opening again, possible dine-in at restaurants, possible hair salon, possible retailers of, for example, the Net Loft and the Flea Shop and some of those kinds of businesses. Now, of course, those businesses don't have to open just because they're allowed to. And we've heard some of the business, seen really. I've seen on some of the Facebook chatter, some local business owners that say, no, we're not going to open our doors. Even if we're allowed to, we're going to stay with curbside service only. And any business could choose to do that if they feel that opening is a bad idea, that their business would somehow be contributing to increased risk. So the individual business owners always have the choice of whether or not they're going to do that. But what the city is trying to decide, or is supposedly going to work on deciding next Wednesday, is whether to remove the city's restrictions, which are right now tighter than the state restrictions. And I'm sure that was a very frustrating thing to hear for a number of the small businesses that first thought they were going to be able to open last Friday, because remember, there was talk last week about the state starting to loosen its restrictions. So there was discussion of that. Some of them were even ready and taking appointments to open Friday, and then came word that the city was going to maintain its tighter restrictions. This is why this thing is such a challenge, by the way, to deal with. And I'm surprised that nobody in the council meeting mentioned this yesterday, because there was a question of from representatives of the business community, why didn't you, the city, why didn't you inform us that the restrictions were going to be tighter? Well, the main reason that was is that when the state mandate came out initially, it had language in it. Now, this is the state mandate relaxing the restrictions. When it's Mandate 16, when Mandate 16 came out, there was very specific language in that mandate that said cities, tribes, municipalities cannot make these restrictions tighter. Then, magically, for some reason, that language disappeared. I don't know if the governor's people heard blowback on that or what happened, but it just vanished. Like on the 23rd, which was Thursday? And so the 24th, last Friday, is when things were supposed to open up. So the city had intended to keep its tighter restrictions. learned from the state that they were not allowed to, so they were going to not do it, and then found out that they could, in fact, stay with their plan to keep things a little tighter for a little longer, and proceeded with that. And in the meantime, while this confusion is happening within the different branches of the government, you've got people, business owners, seeing the state make this announcement that things are going to get relaxed. So, I mean, it was a perfect storm of, confusion. But anyway, it was made pretty clear that there are a number of business owners that are frustrated by this continued restriction on the part of the city. And so the bottom line is that the council is expected to take this up again next week, Wednesday night, with input from our incident management people and doctors. And there is a possibility that Cordova's tighter restrictions on this first wave of non-essential businesses could go away, and those businesses would then be allowed to open under the state plan. Now, the state plan has a lot of very specific things that a non-essential business has to do in order to be open. So the reopening of non-essential businesses is not going to be a willy-nilly return to normal. There's nothing normal or business as usual about these openings. There are rules about increased sanitation. There are rules about not operating at more than 25% capacity. A restaurant that was going to allow dine-in could not take walk-ins. They would have to take reservations only. A place like a hair salon would only be allowed to have one person at a time, and again by reservation. And there's rules about masks and gloves, so it is a partial reopening in the literal sense of partial. And, because we haven't had to close our business, and you may well tell me to stuff it in suggesting this, and probably a lot of local businesses are doing this anyway, but in light of the fact that this will be revisited in 7 days, I would urge any business that hasn't done this yet to use these 7 days to prepare for a successful, sustainable reopening under the state rules. In other words, first of all, make sure that you fill out that form that the city expects to have on file from any local business that plans to operate, period. That's clear across the board. Essential, non-essential, fishing, non-fishing, all of us that are going to be operating while this emergency situation exists are supposed to have paperwork on file that certifies that we have read certain city documents and understand what's expected of us as business owners and operators. That's that mutual aid form. So that's one thing to get checked off the list. Any business that hopes to be able to reopen when the city relaxes the extra restrictions over and above what the state's doing, one thing on the checklist should be to get that city mutual aid form filled out. And it's not a hard, it's not a burdensome form. We filled ours out a week ago. It's real easy. And you can get it from the city website, these mutual aid agreements, if you go to covid19.cityofcordova.net. So that's one thing that can be taken care of for anyone hoping to be able to possibly reopen next week. Get that city form filled out. And then the other thing that's very important is to go to the state site and take a look at Mandate 16. That's the one where the state is addressing the gradual reopening of the non-essential businesses. And that mandate is very thorough and explains what the state expects, what some of the penalties are for not being in compliance. And man, these are some penalties. Big fines, big possible prison time if these rules aren't followed by businesses that want to reopen. So that mandate lays all of that out. And then within Mandate 16, there are a number of attachments that are specific to the different types of businesses that are allowed to reopen during this initial wave. Again, dine-in at restaurants, personal care services like salons, other types of retailers. I don't remember what they all are, but there's a list of attachments, 5 or 6 or 7 of them, that are specific to these different types of operations. So if I was a business that had been told I can't operate yet, what I'd like to believe I would be doing if I was in those shoes is getting my city paperwork filled out and then reviewing that state mandate, downloading the attachment that is specific to my type of business, and working on getting ready to reopen in compliance with everything that is expected, with masking, with sanitation, with how you handle customers. Can you take walk-ins? Does it have to be reservation only? How many people can you have in? You know, the restaurants have to have, for example, can only operate at 25% capacity and have to keep different parties a minimum of 10 feet apart from each other. All these kinds of things are laid out very clearly. And this week could be a real good time for any business who hasn't done that stuff yet. Again, I expect a lot of you probably have. But if you hadn't, this would be the week to definitely nail all that down and be 100% ready to roll so that if you get the green light next week to start opening up again, then you hit the ground running. You're ready to do everything the way it's supposed to be done. And the reason that's important is that if businesses start to reopen and they are not following these safety protocols that have been laid out again by people like Doctors Inc. and Commissioner Crum and a lot of the best of what Alaska has to offer, with some guidance, I imagine, from the CDC and federal brains as well. But all the experts have been working on this plan for how can we reopen and still try to keep things as safe as possible. And if businesses begin to reopen and it becomes clear that they're ignoring that list of things they're supposed to do to be safe and protect the public, and cases start to spike out of control, then all of the restrictions are going to go right back into place at the state level, because that's how they've outlined this. The state has set phases for how they're going to gradually reopen things. This whole idea in the first phase of people operating at 25% capacity, they want to try that for a couple of weeks. And then if it seems to be working and cases aren't spiking out of control, then it progresses to 50% capacity reopening, which they then evaluate for a couple of weeks. And if there aren't spikes, then they can move to 75 or whatever the next percentage is. Or if at 50% you've got a whole bunch of spiking of cases, then they will roll it back to 25%. But the thing that would be a shame is if the business owners and the customers don't understand what's expected in the early phase, and there are irresponsible behaviors that cause a big increase in the number of infections, then the whole non-essential business rollout dies and it goes back to everything non-essential being shut down again. So it's real important in the interest of moving things forward for everyone to understand what the rules are and why the rules are there and to follow them. And I emphasize this because I actually saw when the first phase was being rolled out, I was watching a state news broadcast where a reporter was asking restaurant owners, you know, kind of what do you think of this new deal with the various restrictions. Are you going to open? Are you just going to stay closed? All that sort of stuff. And one of the restaurant owners, and it's somebody I've known for years, and I was watching TV going, huh? Come on, man. What he actually said to the reporter on screen that he thought the idea of only letting people into the restaurant who had reservations didn't make sense, and that if he had a walk-up, he basically wasn't going to tell that person, if he had space in the restaurant, that if he had a walk-up, he wasn't going to turn him away. It was like, what am I going to do? Am I going to tell a potential customer to go back and make a reservation, or am I going to just let him in? I'm just going to let him in. And it's like, dude, way to confess reckless endangerment right there on television and open yourself up to thousands, possibly many, many thousands of dollars in fines and having your business shut down. I mean, and I can see where he's coming from in thinking that it seems kind of silly, but just because it seems silly doesn't mean it isn't a good idea to follow the rules. It says for restaurants very specifically, reservations only, no walk-ups. So, I mean, if a restaurant was taking walk-ups and that was discovered, that the penalties would be paralyzing, I would think. And I expect that part of the logic of taking reservations only for a restaurant owner who wants to be responsible is that if somebody calls you and says, I'd like to make a reservation for this evening at 5 for a party of 3, that would give the person making the reservation the opportunity to say, okay, party of 3. Now, are you all in the same household? To which you would hope the person making the reservation would say yes, and then everything would be fine. Because groups of people sitting together in a restaurant have to be from the same household. Now, can the person making the reservation lie? Sure. Will some of them lie? Probably. But at least the restaurant can say, hey, we tried. These people are lying. And then those people who are lying become responsible for their own violations and reckless endangerment and so forth. And if contact tracing proves that people from different households congregated and created an infectious situation, then those individuals can be held responsible and the restaurant would have a log. But to just say that, oh, the rule's inconvenient, I'm not going to follow it, I mean, you can try that, but I sure wouldn't if I owned a business. I've had to deal with the FCC enough to know that it's much better to know what you're supposed to do. So, summarizing again, it's going to be at least a week before non-essential businesses could open in Cordova. I would urge everybody to use that week, if you haven't already, to fill out those city forms and get the information from the state under Mandate 16. So what you want is a mutual aid form with the city completed, and then also the Mandate 16 requirements from the state, including the attachment that represents your type of non-essential business. Prep. So as soon as, again, you get the green light, you're ready to roll. This is the town meeting talk show for April the 30th, and masks were discussed again a bit at yesterday's council meeting. Something that they spent some time pointing out is the provision that the masking requirement focuses on situations where someone is not able to maintain their 6 feet of distance easily and without question. In other words, the rule is that you need to have a mask on if there's basically any chance that you are going to come close to 6 feet away from somebody. And I think the reason that the city wanted to point this out or talk about this, it has to do with something that we were discussing yesterday on this show, if you remember, where there's a bit of mask vigilantism going on and people treating one another badly over masks and making demands of unmasked people that are not based in the rules or in some cases even in common sense. The city's been hearing about this, obviously, the mask shaming, the mask bullying, where people are taking it upon themselves to chew people out. And, in addition to that just being rude and bullying, some of the negativity being directed at unmasked people has no basis in compliance with the rules. For example, and this is one that I actually heard about occurring, if somebody is walking down the sidewalk on, pick a road, Chase, Lefevre, 2nd Street, whatever, if they're all by themselves, nobody else around, nobody else in sight, and they're taking a walk without a mask, that's fine. They're not going to come within 6 feet of anybody, so they don't, or they're all by themselves out there. They don't need to have a mask on. And we've got people that are targeting folks like that, either directly or on Facebook or something, and calling them out and saying they don't care, they're going to kill people and that kind of stuff, which is wrong. There's no other way to put it. It's absolutely false to do that to somebody. Even in the harbor, which is considered a hot spot. If a person, and they specifically talked about this, if a person was in the harbor, alone, at night, nobody else around, working on a net, they don't have to have a mask on to do that. If they see another person headed their way, then they need to put the mask on. But when you're all by yourself, around people, or just with people in your household doing a project, you don't have to wear them. It's just when you're going to be in places where contact with another person is probable, which is why they talk about the harbor ramps, for example. If you're walking from the floats, say, up to AC, and it's during the day and there are other people out and about, the chance that you'll come within 6 feet of somebody is high, and you should be masked. But if you are, parked out there by the harbor, and it's the middle of the night, and there's not a soul in sight anywhere, it isn't necessary to be masked. So that's what they're, that's what they're kind of saying, and that's the way the rule is written. They also emphasized again something that we'll mention for the 50,000th time because it's important. Masking does not mean it's okay to get closer to people, not in your household. If you were going to stay 6 feet away from somebody who didn't have a mask, if you stay 6 feet away because they don't have a mask and you don't have a mask, you don't change that behavior just because masks are there. If people start getting overconfident with masks and start getting closer to each other and think it's fine to have a face-to-face conversation 3 or 4 feet apart, that's going to backfire and create more cases, which will create more shelter-in-place orders and shut everything back down again. So don't use a mask as an excuse to come within 6 feet of somebody. There will be situations where, if you're passing somebody on a harbor ramp or on one of the floats, where it's more or less impossible for just that brief second, it's more or less impossible to be 6 feet apart. And the masks are intended to help with that. But the masks should not be used as an excuse to get closer to people than you would any more so than you would if nobody had masks. So don't get a false sense of security is, again, that's a point the council wanted to make and that we want to reinforce. Okay, moving on to the next topic. And again, if you want to hear what the council said and interpret it based on your own sense of interpreting things, listen to the actual audio of the meeting. Don't take my word for it. I'm doing my best to try to share things in summary based on what I heard, but the only way you can really make the determination for yourself based on what was said is to listen to the original. So if you want to take my word for it, fine. If not, absolutely listen to the meeting. Now, I got a nice document here from the incident management team that gave an update on what's been done and what they're doing and how things are progressing. So I wanted to share this with you because there's a lot of information in here that I would assume are the kinds of things people want to know. So the IMT says currently both our harbor and airport plans have been activated, and the IMT is now working out the fine details. At the airport, they have a team of folks daily who are giving out information on mandates and what services local businesses are offering. In addition, they're asking that incoming travelers fill out the state form upon entering Cordova. This process not only informs incoming travelers of Cordova's expectations, but gives them the tools to quarantine successfully. So far, there has been much cooperation, and although there are occasionally issues that may need to be addressed, the volunteers are doing a fine job supporting both the incident management team and the community. The harbor plan is moving along, although it may be by the end of next week that all processes are permanently in place. There's much work being done to prepare this area, and good work and planning takes time, although the team is working diligently. Hand-washing stations are to be placed at the top of each dock. These stations can be operated using apparently a foot pedal. This document says elbow or knee, but at the council meeting yesterday, somebody pointed out that they were pretty sure it's a foot pedal operation. But at any rate, a hand-washing station where you don't have to touch something with your hands. Signage regarding mandates and COVID-19 harbor guidelines is being placed. Extra porta-johns may be set up in the harbor areas, and the pool will be opened up as an extra shower facility for those without holding tanks, and so forth. I would point out, by the way, that one of the council members, Meyer, I think, brought up the some signage, I think maybe in Petersburg, where they had big banners that just said basic stuff, like giant letters, masking required, giant letters, 14-day quarantine, and then some smaller signs to accompany that had more of the legalese. And I can't remember if the IMT said they were working on that or were going to take that under consideration and maybe make some big banners. But at any rate, the signage is going in, which should cut way down on the number of people who don't know what's expected, particularly in combination with these harbor and airport plans to educate people. The document goes on to say more information on the process of procuring showers at the pool will be posted and announced to the public when the process is finalized. The harbor will be designated a hot zone for the summer, and all are required to wear a mask while on the docks. Now, as a sidebar, again, if it's 11 p.m. and there's absolutely nobody around you, you don't have to. But generally, when there are other people around, it's required to wear a mask while on the docks. Delivery and pickup options have been created by the grocery and hardware stores to support fishermen and crews as essential workers in the safest way possible. Fishing vessels will complete mutual aid agreements with the city, communicating COVID-19 expectation understanding, and they will list their crew and check in with the harbor upon arrival. That's the same thing all businesses have to do, by the way. Basically, confirm to the city that you know what the city expectations are to be a functioning business, and that you've read what the city expects. And then if you sign off on that, you turn it in, and then you follow it, everything's fine. But if you sign it and turn it in, and then you're found to be not doing those things, then there's a problem. Moving on. All individuals in Cordova must wear a mask, bandana, or other type of cloth protective covering over the nose and mouth when entering a building open to the public, the harbor, on docks and ramps, when pumping gas or using gas station amenities, and in any other settings where social distancing of at least 6 feet is not possible. In addition to both of these plans, the city of Cordova will be hiring a few folks in 2 positions to help support the local COVID-19 effort. One of these positions will be for ports of entry ambassadors to distribute information and resources to those incoming to Cordova. And the other position is for custodians to help keep the public restrooms clean and safe throughout the summer season. Those are not bad paying jobs, by the way, if you want to look into that. The Cordova Junior-Senior High School Gymnasium has been modified for use as an alternate care center and shelter depending on multiple scenarios Cordova could be faced with. It's currently a last resort option as the city has set up a non-congregate sheltering process with the help of local lodging entities and medical and mental health professionals. If and when a person needs shelter, they will contact a medical and or mental health facility and will be granted a shelter voucher upon communicating their needs and meeting the required criteria. Other avenues for shelter have been discussed and will be looked into further if they become necessary. So using the school as kind of an overflow for either medical or quarantining options. I know they did that in Fairbanks with the Carlson Center, which is Fairbanks' version of the Sullivan Arena. It was set up to be a hospital overflow for, a place that medical staff could house COVID patients who were not in serious condition, but that needed to be observed in case there were so many cases that the hospital couldn't handle all of them. And it sounds like that's a possibility for the big gym at CHS, and maybe it could be used for people who need to shelter that don't otherwise have an apartment or someone they're going to stay with or whatever. So that's good thinking. In addition to the city efforts, several other entities have stepped forward with great effort. The Cordova School District is sending home weekly lunches for all students. CCMC has opened up their senior lunch program to those 55 and above, where it was previously 60 and above. CCMC is serving about 70 elderly citizens a day. NVE is serving the Native community through the use of their food bank and elderly care services. Salvation Army's been preparing community food boxes on a monthly basis and have currently experienced a jump from feeding 40 families per month to 70. And they would greatly appreciate any donations, by the way. We talked about that yesterday. Protein sources especially, canned items. So you can contact Steve Leppert. Is that how you say it? I'm not sure. 429-6262. To make donations to the Salvation Army. The Cordova Chamber of Commerce is currently sourcing business information for the community. They have a list of businesses, including changes those businesses have made to daily routines for the public. Are they doing takeout? Are they doing drive-up, curbside delivery, all that kind of thing? Are they open? Are they closed? If you have questions on when a business is open and or if they're doing delivery or pickup, the Chamber is a great resource. If you own or operate a small business, be sure to see their site for information on small business economic injury and disaster loans. And you can go to cordovachamber.com to get more information. Also, local businesses who want to update their hours or processes can email that to Jessica Hoover at programs@cordovachamber.com. That's a very thorough list that they have, by the way. I've seen it a few times. A reminder about the city's COVID-19 webpage, covid19.cityofcordova.net. It's a lot more streamlined, a lot easier to navigate. The letter says, as a city, we're fortunate to have many groups and citizens volunteering their time and donating resources to the COVID-19 cause. There's currently a local network of local ladies making masks for the community, as well as an additional family generating face shields with their 3D printer. There are folks checking in on the elderly, delivering meals, taking groceries to those in need, and the city very much appreciates all those helping hands. That being said, the city is looking at the long haul throughout the summer. If you're willing to volunteer at the harbor or the airport or assisting with the elderly and vulnerable population, you can email your name and contact information to emc@cityofcordova.net. Again, that's EMC, Echo Mike Charlie, at cityofcordova.net, or there's a volunteer form you can fill out on the city website. The medical community has been a huge support, says this document. They've assisted in vetting all processor plans, helping us to develop the non-congregate shelter process, given assistance in drafting volunteer safety plans, and altogether been amazing to work with. This last week, Clay Copeland and Dr. Blackadar visited local businesses and gave feedback on safety plans to help assist local business owners. In addition, multiple medical personnel have supported the city on local processor and council calls that currently take place weekly. The medical community itself has made strides in preparing for COVID-19. The city currently has 3 Abbott Rapid Testing. That's always hard to say. Abbott That's twice. Come on. The city of Cordova currently has 3 Abbott Rapid Response testing machines and a healthy testing capacity. The first of these machines was given to NVE by the Alaska Native Medical Center. The following 2 were given to CCMC through the state. Both CCMC and the Yolonka Clinic staff have trained on and are currently operating these rapid response testing machines. All processes through both CCMC and Yolonka have been clearly communicated between the facilities as an effort to cross-train employees. EMS has made many arrangements toward preparing for COVID-19, including collaborating with our medical professionals on developed processes, ordering additional equipment, and putting their own safety procedures in place. The collaboration of these entities will help ensure that all have put strong plans in place to better serve and protect our community from the disease. The city has formed 3 groups that are meeting via teleconference. The industry group is the shippers and the processors. That's group 1. They meet every Friday at 3 to relay updates and check in on progress with the city. All local processors are participating and actively engaging in these calls. They've cooperatively set plans in place to support the safety of their staff and Cordova as a community. Both Trident and Ocean Beauty will be bringing on their own medical staff. Trident will be quarantining their workers once in Anchorage before transporting them to Cordova, where they will again quarantine for the added security of the community. Ocean Beauty staff will be tested prior to arriving in Cordova and again prior to the end of their quarantine. Both plants will be requesting that workers stay on the premises as much as possible for the duration of the season. And I seem to recall from reading one of those plans that workers who don't comply with the processor orders to stay on campus will be let go. I could be remembering that wrong, but I'm almost sure I saw that in one of the processor plans, that they're taking that seriously. They want their workers to stay there. Group number 2, the Essential Business Group, is all grocery stores and hardware stores. They've been meeting every other Wednesday, and during those meetings, the city engages the businesses about any changes in their processes, what's working, and what do they need help with. Additionally, they're provided with updated city information relating to their needs and their operations. The goal is to help build and facilitate safe processes for the community. COVID-19 signage is provided, if needed, throughout the city, and the collaboration of these entities is greatly appreciated. All local businesses in operation and or prior to reopening need to fill out a business mutual aid agreement with the city, which includes their COVID-19 mitigation plan. This plan is to help keep the business staff, and patrons safe throughout the COVID-19 situation. This is what we were talking about earlier. In addition to knowing what the state requires, the city also wants certification that you know what's expected. They want to see your plan, how you're going to keep everybody safe, and you have all that on file. That's for every single business that plans to be open. Even if you're just a one customer at a time type of business, every single business, if you want to be open, you need to have one of these plans on file. All mutual aid agreements for both the harbor and the local businesses are being reviewed by members of the incident management team to ensure the safety of the community. The participation of both the fishing community and business community is greatly appreciated. And the public health nurse will be in town the week of May 11th, available to do business walkthroughs and assist with COVID-19 safety plans if requested. If you want more information, email emc@cityofcordova.net. So I'll just throw in again, for any businesses that aren't open yet, that might be able to open next week, this would be a great time to fill out one of those agreements and get your plan turned in if you haven't yet, because then you're done. Then it's not like they say, okay, you can open, and then it's, oh, okay, now I got to do my paperwork. Do the paperwork now. If you haven't already, then you're ready to roll as soon as it's okay. So that's group number 2, the essential business group. Third group, that would be the stakeholder group, which is defined as a list of folks essential to Cordova, including critical infrastructure and local agencies. They meet every other Wednesday and are given city updates, and the city receives updates from them on COVID-19. Additionally, on all calls, they address any questions or concerns. These meeting groups allow the incident command team to keep a broad picture of how they're doing in the community. That information received helps direct an action to a need. In combination with community concerns and questions to the Cordova Prepared email, gaps are identified and the team is able to troubleshoot those areas of need. The city says they are thankful for the input received through these avenues, as information gathered often helps to produce strong plans and procedures. And they remind again the Cordova Prepared email is cordovaprepared@yahoo.com. There's then a reminder that the City of Cordova, Village of Eac, the City of Cordova and the Village of Eac have entered into a unified command in order to support all processes fully moving forward. New members of the incident management team from both NVE and Alonka, and the city says it's very grateful to have the partnerships. So again, a lot of information in that document. I don't know if that's available to read anywhere or not, but if you missed any of it or if I went too fast, you can go back and hear it on our website when this show gets archived. Not our website, but our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Cordova TV. This show and all the COVID stuff that we do is archived there, as I'm sure you know by now. Now, another email from the Cordova Prepared folks with some updated information. A reminder to visit the city's COVID-19 page again. which not only has information about our community, but also links to state and federal places like the Centers for Disease Control, the Alaska Department of Health and Social Services. New things that have gone up on that city site recently. The incident management team has released its latest objectives as of yesterday, its organizational chart as of yesterday, the airport operational entry plan, the volunteer form, and updated frequently asked questions. They reiterate the harbor update information as a port of entry. Face coverings required in the harbor. Hand washing stations are being placed at the top of each ramp, and you don't have to use your hands to operate them. Additional signage being prepared. CDFU and the city are preparing additional quarantine locations. Extra porta potties will be set up in the harbor areas. And again, the pool will be opened up for showers and restroom use. Looks like Monday. Port of entry airport update is that face coverings are required in the terminal and vicinity of the airport. Volunteers are greeting incoming passengers and sharing information on mandates for Cordova and assisting incoming travelers in filling out the state form upon arrival. Quarantine information is provided, as well as details on what services local businesses are providing. Now, this document has incorporated some Forest Service information, which I haven't seen, so let's take a look at this. The Chugach National Forest Cordova Ranger District is cleaning developed recreation sites as often as possible during COVID-19 to minimize risk to public health and safety. Cordova Ranger District recognizes an influx of seasonal workforce in need of locations to quarantine. The Forest Service says, please do not quarantine at developed recreation sites or trailheads, including Eyak Boat Launch, Sheridan Glacier Recreation Area, Alleganic Boat Launch, 18-mile recreation site, One-Eyed Pond Recreation Site, 22-mile boat launch, and any Chugach National Forest trailhead. Again, they ask that nobody quarantine. Please do not quarantine at those places. They go on to say it is legal to camp up to 14 days on National Forest land, except at day-use developed recreation sites or where otherwise posted. And if you are going to camp, they remind about properly disposing of any human waste, packing out all trash, basically leaving the area better than you found it. How are we doing on time here? Man, I don't want to talk about ferry service. It's just so lame. Yeah, we'll do it. A couple of things on that. From the Legislative Information Office. Oh, first, don't forget, today is the last day to apply for the PFD, if you haven't done that. So, now you know. Marine Highway announces new schedule, decreased service for Prince William Sound. The Alaska Marine Highway System announced Monday a change in the summer schedule released 10 days ago. Instead of the vessel LeConte serving Prince William Sound July through September, the vessel Kennecott will provide service beginning in July. However, instead of regular weekly service, the Kennecott will run from Cordova to Whittier about 4 times each month, with longer intervals between its visits. The Whittier-Cordova run will also be made about 4 times each month, and there will be 2 trips each month from Cordova to Valdez. AMHS also announced the vessel Aurora will be repaired this summer and be ready for service in the fall. The Aurora was the last ferry to service Cordova in mid-September 2019. Yeah. And also on that subject, and I don't know why I didn't get notice of this until 10 p.m. last night, so this is my first chance to tell you about it. But if you've been interested in these Marine Highway Reshaping Work Group meetings, there's one of those today. Thursday the 30th from 1:30 to 3. The Alaska Marine Highway Reshaping Work Group. This is their rescheduled meeting from Thursday the 16th, which they didn't have because of technical issues. The public is invited to join by calling toll-free at 855-925-2801, meeting code 8352, and I'll give you those again in a sec if you want to grab a pencil. The meeting will not include a comment period, but there will be opportunities for robust public participation in the future. The agenda for the meeting is focused on 2 items. The first is a discussion of strategic objectives for the ferry system. This will be based on extensive past research, including the AMHS reshaping study. The second item of discussion is innovation, recognizing the need for new creative solutions with the goal of a reliable, safe, and efficient system. So again, if you want to listen in, the phone number for this meeting from 1:30 to 3 today is 855-925-2801, meeting code 8352. Once again, 855-925-2801, meeting code 8352. Okay, how's that for plenty in one day? Thanks for listening to the Town Meeting program, brought to you by Cordova Wireless Communications. Daily briefings will be coming up today in the 1, 5, and 8 p.m. hours. All of our COVID stuff gets archived on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Cordova TV. Thank you, Robbie, for taking care of that. Thank you, audience, for joining us for the show. Hope it was helpful. And thanks again, Cordova Wireless Communication, for bringing you Town Meeting on KLAM. All your missed programming from the 10 a.m. hour is on the way.